Mtgnerdgirl is proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com. When you use promo code MNG5 at checkout, you'll receive a free exclusive MTG Nerdgirl Vampire token, as well as 5% off your entire order. Show your support for her content and get this free bonus by using the code MNG5. Only at CoolStuffInc.com. Cool stuff in stock.
Welcome back, guys. We are here for the Brothers War set review for Limited. As always, these are sponsored by Cool Stuff, so if you guys would like to support the channel and the content, make sure you guys use MNG5 at checkout. You guys can buy all your pre-orders and singles from Brothers War. Welcome back, Yanks.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
I am doing quite well. Thanks for asking. So we're going to go ahead and just kick it right off here with White. If you guys missed the introduction where we go over new and returning mechanics and archetypes, that's already up here on YouTube. So please go back and check that out. But for now, we're going to go ahead and start with the Aeronaut Cavalry, a 5 mana human soldier. It's a 3/4 with flying. And it says whenever Aeronaut Cavalry enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another soldier you control. So we're seeing a lot of soldier synergy, not only in Dominaria, but in this set. So we're starting to get that theme where this might be viable and constructed, but we don't care about that. We care about here in Limited, and I know there was a new Soldier Lord printed in this set because it was my preview card. Yanks, what do you think about this flying soldier?
Yeah, blue-white is a soldier's archetype in this set. I took a quick look through the spoiler earlier, and not counting this card because it says another target soldier, there are 25 soldiers at common or uncommon set. 8 other ones in white, or things that make soldier tokens.
That's a lot. Holy smokes.
Yeah, they're spread through all the colors, but a third of them are in white, basically.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy, deep archetype, I think, for sure. The other thing I wanted to mention is, like, 5 mana 3/4 flyers is just like a normal thing that we sometimes put on our top end, even if there isn't a lot of synergy for it, and a lot of times they're just fine. Borderline playable, but if you have a good chance of getting any value off of this, then you're going to be able to bump it up a little bit of a chunk there.
Yeah, and it's also a good beneficiary for other soldier bonuses we might see from said Soldier Lord or from the blue-white multicolor signpost.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say with no soldier synergy, which you're not likely to have, none of that is. This would be like a 2, but I think in most decks, this is just going to be a 2/5.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 2/5, and then if you're heavy soldiers where you're really likely to get at least the counter and get 4/5 for 5, then it's probably a 3.
Okay, so I was thinking it was a 2 and then a 2/5, which I thought you just would most likely get those sort of synergies, but we're pretty close, about a quarter of a point off.
Yeah.
All right, the Airlift Chaplain, 3 mana for a human cleric. It's a 1/1 flyer that says when it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. You may put a plains card or a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them, from the milled cards this way, into your hand. If you don't, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So potentially it, sort of gives you a little bit of card advantage, as well as helps fuel graveyard synergies. And if you whiff, for whatever reason, you still get a 2 mana flyer, or 2/2 flyer for 3, which is sort of like Windrake stats, which is a little, underwhelming at this point, but I think this is an okay card. What do you think?
Yeah, it's like a weird cross, right? Because you kind of get, in Streets of New Capenna, you had Angelic Overseer, which was amazing, which was a 2/1 flyer that drew a card and gained a life. In this case, sometimes you're going to get a 1/1 that draws a card, and sometimes you're just going to get 2/2, which I think is worse, but not crazy worse.
Yeah, I think Angelic Overseer was a problem. That card was way too good.
Oh, yeah, no arguing how good that card is. This isn't that far behind it. It's behind it, but it's not that far.
Really? To me, this feels way farther behind, but okay, I can see that. I would rather have a card and a 2-power flyer all the time.
Oh, I agree. That certainly would rather have Angelic Overseer. But I think it's not as far behind as it just looks when you see 1/1 flying and just this big wall of text.
Yeah.
I think it'll play a little better than that.
Interesting. I was more on the fence. Like, Angelic Overseer to me is like a 3.5. This is like a 2 to me.
It's going to depend a bit on your deck, or how heavy white are you, how low to the ground are you? Like how often are you going to get that card? We will see some cards in this set that do kind of encourage monocolor play. So maybe you'll be a little like heavier into one color than usual, but yeah, it's certainly not the 3/5 that Overseer was, but I've got this at like probably a 2/5.
Okay, just a little higher than me. I'm going to keep us moving along so we can get through white. All right, we have Ambush Paratrooper, 2 mana for a 1/2 flying with flash. 5 mana creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. We see this in almost every single set, some sort of anthem mechanic creature. Usually they're on the ground. It's kind of interesting to see that this is a little flyer on a relevant creature type as a soldier as well. So this thing is awesome.
Yeah, I like having this ability in the air, and these creatures are always just removal magnets, right? Like if you're playing them, you probably want to go wide, so your opponent knows they need to kill this thing.
Yeah, this thing to me is like a 3. I feel like it's doing everything I want my white go wide soldier decks to do.
Yeah, no argument there.
Could play a little bit down if you have a low creature count, of course. All right. Sure. I'll let you take this one.
Oh, Autonomous Assembler. This is a 5 mana 4/5 artifact creature assembly worker at rare. If it has prototype where you can cast it for 1 and a white and it'll be a 2/2. Either way, it'll have vigilance, and you can pay 1 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target assembly.
And it itself is an assembly worker, which is interesting. So we've seen these sort of mechanics before. Either way, the rate is good, right? It's a 2/2 with vigilance. It's a 5 mana 4/5 with vigilance. Both of those things are on rate or above. Like I'm happy to play that. And then being able to just have a late game mana sink when you can't attack or get aggressive. It also doesn't say you can do this at only sorcery speed. So you can leave it up for blocks and then dump some extra mana into it should you need to if you're behind on the race. I think this card is fantastic.
Yeah, the fact that it's vigilance and a cheap activated ability means that it's if you play it at a 5-drop, you're really getting a 5/6 the next turn that attacks. Because it's only costing you 1 mana to attack and then activate before blocks or whatever.
Yeah, the vigilance allows you to do both. It's actually kind of nutty. Yeah, I think this card is pretty good. It doesn't quite feel game winning, but it feels very strong. I think this is like a 4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have it a little lower at like a 3/5. I just think because of the nature of the set with Power Stones and with a lot of artifacts, we're going to be seeing a lot of large bodies. So I don't know if the 4/5 on the ground is going to be as impressive as it usually is.
Yeah, that makes sense. So not too far off, about a half a point.
Yep.
All right, Calamity's Wake. We have an instant 2 mana spell. Exile all graveyards. Players can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Exile it. This feels like a constructed card.
Yeah, this is a constructed / sideboard card. Unearth being in the format means the graveyard's relevant, so I could see a world where you bring this in, but
yeah,
most of the time it's just a 1 for 0, basically.
There are some decks, we saw with Dominaria that have a lot of recursion, some formats, so it's going to depend on that, but for the most part, I think this is just an easy one, and probably not something you're going to board in very often.
Agreed.
Combat Thresher, we have a 7 mana with prototype for 3. It's a 1/1 instead of a 3/3. And it has double strike, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So 3 mana, 1/1, draw a card, double strike, that's pretty solid. 7 mana, 3/3, double strike, draw a card. Also pretty solid.
Interestingly, both of the prototype cards we've seen so far, I kind of like better for their prototype cost.
I mean, I always want it bigger. I like the prototype, the fact that it allows you to cast it whenever it is drawn and convenient. If it's in your opening hand, I agree. The prototype cost is fantastic. It's a great rate there, but I'm never sad to cast it if I top deck it late in the game either.
Sure, yeah. The flexibility is what makes these cards great.
This one is, I love that it draws a card. 3 mana, 1/1 double strike, draw a card is great rate for me. I'm going to rate this at a 3.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you.
All right, Deadly Repose. We got a 2 mana instant. It deals 3 damage to target tapped creature, and you gain 2 life at instant speed, so you don't even need to take a beating from it. Yeah, this card is white's normal removal. I think this is probably a 3/5 for me.
Yeah, we see some version of 2 mana, deal 3 to tapped or to attacking or blocking, or 4 to something in every set. They're always playable.
It's usually 4, but you don't gain life, so it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off here.
Yeah, and sometimes that's like attacking or blocking, which lets you get untapped, but it doesn't let you hit utility. So, it's all trade-offs, but I think it's still in that same vein as it always is.
3/5 it is. We have a Disenchant reprint. 2 mana for a destroy target artifact and or enchantment. Typically, this is just a sideboard card. However, this is a very artifact-heavy format, so this is definitely a 23rd playable card in my book. You're going to be able to kill quite a few prototype scary creatures with this.
I don't even think this is a 23rd card. I think this is just a good playable in this format.
Yeah, we're going to have to see how many of the artifacts are playable. I'm wondering if, like, the 4 prototype in every color are good, and then, like, a lot of times artifacts are just not that great in the artifact section. So
yeah, I think the ones that you're seeing that are going to have prototype are good. There's been a lot of spoiled bombs that are artifacts, and there's always a few targets for disenchant floating around in every set, like your pacifism type things as well. I'd be pretty surprised if I cut the first disenchant.
Okay. For me right now, I think it's like borderline having only dipped my toes into about a third of the one color, but I'm definitely happy to bump it up should there be a lot more very good common and uncommon artifacts as well. So 2/5. Great Desert Protector. We have a 5 mana 3/2 human artificer that says when it enters the battlefield, create a tapped Power Stone for each other creature you control. Holy smokes. That's a lot of Power Stones.
Yeah, it is. I'm not 100% sure what deck this goes in, because a lot of times the go wide decks tend to be lower to the ground, so you don't need all this mana. But with the prototype creatures in the format, you can be both low to the ground and still have expensive things at the same time.
I mean, Selesnya a lot of times is very tall. Especially we saw like the big mech in green-white that wants you to be sinking a ton of mana into things, which is kind of neat. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the fence on this card. It's such a bad rate. Oh, we never graded it, did we?
I think it's like an okay rate. I think that's a lot of Power Stones. So if you have any reason to want them, I think that's kind of a nutty card.
Yeah, I'm very torn on this card. I think there's going to be a lot of times where this card is just, you draw this and you're like, oh, 5 mana 3/2 that makes my 12th mana. Woohoo.
Yeah. I mean, most 3/2s, whatever they are, is always going to be sort of underwhelming late game. This is probably pretty, like, the reason you're torn is it's probably pretty close to a split card. Like, you'll know what decks want this. Like, if you want Power Stones, this is great. If your deck is Boros, and your curve tops out at 4, of course, this isn't going to be something that you're going to be considering. So, probably just depends on the deck is the answer, which is why I think you're having such a hard time with it.
Yeah, and because it also needs the right kind of top end, right? It needs to be artifact top end or ability top end. Otherwise, the Power Stones don't do anything.
Why not?
Because they don't cast. You can't spend them to cast non-artifacts. The mana only goes for non-artifact spells or abilities.
Oh, I thought it was just. I thought I just made colorless.
No.
Oh, that is worse. That is worse than I thought Power Stones were. Huh.
Yeah. Okay. You can use them to pay. You can use them for any ability. It doesn't have to be an artifact ability. Like the flyer we saw that you pay 5 to pump the board. You can use them for that.
Yeah. That's still significantly worse. But, yeah. So this could be sort of your top end in your soldier deck that goes super, super wide, and then you've got a bunch of those flyers that pump the board, right? So you just, like, get to lay in multiple sinks, which is kind of neat. But, yeah, I do like this a significant amount less now. I was like, there's got to be some big green idiot that just, like, needs a million mana, right? I'm mistaken.
Well, that big artifact one still feeds nicely for this.
Yes, for sure. But I thought it was a little bit more flexible than that.
Yeah.
So I'll give it like, it's kind of a split rating. It's kind of like a 1/5/2/5.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. In the trenches, we've got a 3 mana mythic enchantment. all creatures get +1/+1, and you can pay 6 mana to exile a permanent you don't control until Trenches leaves the battlefield, and you can only activate this once. So it's sort of a built-in O-Ring Anthem, which is kind of nuts. It does everything I want. This is awesome. I think it's like a 4/5.
Yeah, the card's great. The Anthem effects in white are always good. The O-Ring is a bonus. Note that you can only activate it once. It's not like you can only have one thing exiled, so if you activate it and they give it hexproof in response, you don't get to activate it again later.
Yes, unless you can like bounce or flicker this somehow.
Yes.
But yes.
Yep.
That is definitely good to note that you can, it doesn't say it can only have one thing targeted and eaten. It does say you can only activate once, so that's really poopy. But still great. 4/5, I love it.
Yeah, great card.
All right. Kyla's Command. We have 3 mana for a choose 2. Create a 2/2 colorless construct artifact creature token. Or put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. It gains double strike until end of turn. Sorcery speed, so a little less exciting. Search your library for a basic plains card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle, or gain 2 life and scry 2. Pretty flexible. It does, nothing is overpowered, but any 2 of these things combined is definitely worth 3 mana to me.
Yeah, this gets its value just on like cumulative value for, I was trying to come up with a better word, but you're right, nothing spectacular here, but any pair of these, like you said, are good.
Yeah, they're all worth 3 mana, so the fact that this spell is cheap enough makes it fine. Rating wise, what do you think?
I think it's like a 3. It's a solid player. I'm always happy to have it, but it's not going to win a game.
At sorcery speed, I feel like it's pretty underwhelming as far as a rare. So, I mean, I'm kind of in that 2/5/3 range. If it was an instant, I'd be a lot happier with it, like the double strike clause and being able to like possibly do some cool stuff with blocking. But yeah, I'm on the low end side as well. All right, Kyla's Reconstruction. We have X and 3 white for sorcery. It says look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to X artifacts or creature cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest onto the bottom in a random order.
I wish I knew the math well enough on this to know how often it's going to hit.
I mean, it's hard to cast. They have to be mana value 3 or less, which is not going to hit most of your big payoffs. This doesn't seem good to me.
Agreed. The only reason I'm thinking about it, and we'll see this a little bit with the next card, is that there's definitely some encouragement in this set to be heavy in one color. So the casting cost might not be as bad, but you're right, it's still probably going to whiff too much, or you're going to pay 7 and get 1 3-mana spell.
Yeah. I'm not happy with this. I don't think this is going to be playable. Maybe in like a mono white go wide deck, but that's very specific to one deck, and the ratings are very average for average decks, and I just don't think this is ever going to make the cut. So
agreed. And if you're in that deck, this will come around late because no one else will.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this a 1. It's a highly synergistic card, and I will probably never cast it.
I certainly will never cast it.
All right, we've got a sorcery, Lay Down Arms, 1 mana for an exile target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. This is like a sorcery speed Swords to Plowshares in most things. Because especially in like you were saying, we're going to see a lot of things that are going to incentivize us to sort of be a little bit more close to monocolor. Obviously, it's not Swords to Plowshare, but like it feels good because early, right, you're going to have a couple of planes, and as the game goes on, you get more and more, and the creatures get bigger and bigger. So it kind of scales nicely. Obviously, if you're a 3-color deck, this is going to be significantly worse. But monocolor is a thing, and in a 2-color deck, I think this is pretty solid.
Yeah. If you're, this isn't a lot of times like cheap removal or stuff is something you can splash. You are not splashing this card, but you are going to be thrilled to play it in 2-color deck that's heavy white, and you'll be pretty happy with it in a 2-color deck that's just medium to light white too.
Yeah, if you're like straight 2 colors, this is probably going to play like a 2/5, maybe a 3. And then if you're leaning heavy white, it's going to go up to potentially a 3/5.
Yeah, and I think that if you're in monocolor, it basically is Sorcery Plow.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Monocolor, it's just a straight 4. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Lauren the Third Path, we have a 3-mana 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance that says when it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, and you can tap it. You and target opponent each draw a card. I mean, I hate the white we both draw shit. I'm always not a fan of that. However, this card is fantastic, even if we just kind of scratch that part out.
Yeah, I view that last part as if I'm desperate to try to find some answer to something on your board, I'll take the chance that we can each draw.
Yes.
If you're mana screwed and I know I can dump my hand more, faster or something like that.
So the other time that I find that this mechanic really comes in handy, which I have done with the most recent DMU set with the Saga, where it's like you can read ahead, and the first one was you both draw 2. So I've been in a situation where I'm like Boros aggro on the play, and I've dumped out 90% of my hand, and my opponent is just like on 3 lands, hasn't cast a spell yet, and they have so many cards, right?
Yep.
So they're not going to be able to utilize the cards that you're giving them. Yes, they'll have card advantage, but they can't possibly play enough cards for it to be relevant. And the only thing I need to do is just keep my foot on the gas, and then we can consider letting us both draw. But for the most part, either way, this ETB is going to be insane. It's a solid creature on its own, and I am happy to be playing this. I think it's honestly probably a 4. I think that this ETB is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's very good. I don't have it quite that high because it's still just a pretty insignificant body. So yeah, you could get some value out of it, but I don't think it's quite to that level. I think I've got it like maybe a 3/5 or a 3.
Okay.
Like Reclamation Sage wouldn't be a 4.
Well, Reclamation Sage didn't have another flexible ability with a
agreed.
keyword.
This is better. Agreed. But
all right, Lauren's Escape, 1 mana for an instant. Target artifact or creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Scry 1. Okay. Usually those two things aren't going to be super important together, because usually it's like removal spell, hexproof, or whatever. But there's a chance maybe you're in blocking and you want to do a thing and then they try to remove it and you get both. Cool. Yeah, 1 mana, I like these spells well enough. The better your deck is, the more you want these. If you've got some things that really that you want to stick on the board, we're happy to play one of these. What do you think, Yanks?
Yeah, any of the cheap combat tricks that protect things are always worth playing. You're going to trade for something and usually trade up on mana in the process.
And Scry is nothing too small either. So I think this is a very playable card as a 1-of. You can consider 2, the better your deck goes. It's probably a 2/5 for me.
Yeah, I think it's around a 2/5. Since people are asking, should I explain who Lauren is?
Please, I have no idea who Lauren is.
Okay, so Lauren, we see her on a few cards here. She was a fellow student of Urza and Mishra in the camps at the beginning. She was an older student, and then war starts. She kind of disappears from the storyline a bit, but she ends up in Teresia City, which is on the far side of Teresiare, which is the continent that the Brothers' War takes place on. And the city there is trying to find the third path, which is the path that is neither Urza nor Mishra, and trying to find a way to basically be neutral and figure out how to survive. And eventually, as these two major war machines are cannibalizing the world for resources, they eventually get over there. And Teresia City is studying, we'll see some other cards later, studying magic, like mana and spells, which didn't exist in the world at this point, or the knowledge had been lost. And that was the third path. And Lauren's escape, as we see here, what she's carrying is the Golgothian Silex, which eventually makes its way to Urza and is the artifact that the climax of the story, he managed to discover how to channel mana into the thing and basically blows up Mishra and sends the world into the Ice Age, which obviously is another Magic set, and sends Dominaria into there for changes kind of the course of history, and that the Silex Blast, which is what Karn is trying to recreate. He's trying to recreate a Silex. We saw Karn Silex last set to bring to New Phyrexia to basically do the same thing.
Holy crap. I think you could just keep rabbit holing down into all of the storylines there. We went from who is this person to a lot of detail.
That's why I asked first.
Wow. Someone is very hot and bothered for Brothers War. I love it, Yanks. Thank you so much. Keep throwing in the tidbits, especially like anything that's like, oh, see the item in her hand? That's X item. That would be really cool. If you see it, make sure you stop me.
Yep, we've got a few of these cycles where they have what they call vertical cycles with like an uncommon Loran here, which is the next card, a rare Loran, that are showing her kind of throughout her progress through that storyline.
Okay. Well, we have the Loran Disciple of History, as Yanks clearly is, a 4-mana human artificer. It's a 3/3. 4 mana, it's about on rate for an uncommon. Whenever this card or another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Ooh. So that's some fantastic value, even just if with a 1 ETB.
Yeah, I really like this card. There's got a lot of triggers or a lot of targets. I took a quick scan through legendaries in this set. There are 4 other uncommon legendary creatures, plus 18 of them at rare and mythic. So there's a decent chance of getting a second trigger. But even without it, you're getting a ton of value, especially with how powerful some of the prototype artifacts are.
Okay, very cool. What are you thinking rating-wise?
I like this at like a 3. If you think you can get a couple triggers out of it, or you have really good targets, maybe I bump it up.
Yeah, I'm thinking it also kind of depends on the quantity of artifacts in your deck, because let's say you can't get another trigger out of this, but you're very likely to get an artifact that's a 3 or higher out of it just because you have 5 to 10 3 or higher artifacts. I'm higher on this. Like, then that, this becomes quite a decent bit of card advantage for me. So I think it's between a 3 and a 3/5 if your artifacts can support it, or if you have multiple legendary triggers, even if they're poopy artifacts.
Agreed. And as you can see in the flavor text of this card is kind of what I was talking about. Takasia was the teacher of Urza Mishra and Loran.
Okay. Very cool. Yanks knows all. Let's move on to the next sorcery. Mass production for a 6-mana. Create 4 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. Interesting that the colorless artifacts are soldiers. That's kind of cool. I think that's like the first time we're really seeing that. Normally they're like, little constructs, thopters, or scions or something. But this is cool. We're creating a relevant creature type that happens to also be colorless, and an artifact which we can use in a lot of other things in the format.
Yeah, I imagine they're soldiers for a couple reasons. One, because they wanted a soldier theme here, but also Urza historically created Yoshian soldiers was his army that he made, was the artifacts he made, and that is an old card from, I believe, Antiquities, but it might have been in Alpha or Beta.
So here's the problem with your little storylines. I love them. Everybody who has been watching our set reviews in the past is going to be like, this is so cool, this is so much better. And then next set, you're going to not say a dang thing, and everybody's going to feel very upset, and they're going to be like, oh, this is terrible. Like, I just wasted all this time, and I was hoping for all the sweet info, and you're not going to have it. So what this means is from now on, you have to do all of the research and read all the books before each set.
I could probably pull it off for the next couple sets with the Phyrexians, but once we get back to Eldraine and Ixalan, it'll be a little tougher.
So this reminds me a lot of the Samurai card that we had in Kamigawa. It's going to be good if you have the Samurai payoffs, in this case soldiers, but for the most part, it seems very expensive to me. And at sorcery speed, I'm a little underwhelmed.
Yeah, I want to have soldiers need to be relevant for me to play this card.
Yeah, or if I just have like 2 of the flyers that pump soldiers, that like pump these go-wides, 4 bodies is a lot, but you do need the synergy for it. So it's pretty close to a split card. I'm probably not playing this in any deck that isn't super, super relevant with this card. I'm going to call this a 2.
Yeah, I think two's right.
All right, I'll let you take this one.
Meticulous Excavation. We have an enchantment for a single white mana with an activated ability 2 and a white. Return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it has Unearth, instead exile it, then return that card to its owner's hand. Activate only during your turn. So we have a recurring bounce effect for your own stuff. The weird wording on Unearth is because Unearth says whenever it leaves the battlefield, you exile it. So this case, by including the exile as part of it, it lets you choose which of the two exiles to use, and you use this one so that it goes back to your hand instead of exiling permanently.
So if you bring it back with Unearth, do you then get to use this ability and keep it?
So yeah, if you unearth something,
That's cool.
And then so whatever attack with it, if it has haste or whatever, then you can use this mana to exile it and bring it back to your hand. It was kind of like you had a weird interaction like that with, I think it was Obsidat and Whip of Erebos in like Theros block standard, where you had multiple exiling effects and you got to choose which one counted.
I like the theme here. The Brothers War. So it says, remember, students, if it's glowing, humming, or whirring, don't touch it. So like it's very flavorful actually between your tidbits and the actual like art and flavor text. But anyway, yeah, I think this is okay. It's sort of like a teleportation circle that you have to dump mana into. So you have to have a good reason to have this mana sink be relevant. Some ETBs, some unearths, and then I think it's okay.
Yeah. In your average deck, it's probably not great, but you'll know when you want it. And the fact that it's an ability, as an activated ability, Power Stones feed it. So if you have a lot of those, it gets relatively cheap.
So we'll say in the average deck, probably a 1.5.
Yeah, but definitely has build around potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Military Discipline, 1 mana for an enchantment aura with flash. It says enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, enchant creature gains first strike till end of turn, and it gets +1/+0 permanently. So it's kind of like a mini removal spell. Cast it carefully, but I tend to find flash enchantments and flash auras to be fine. I don't like to get myself 2-for-1 without a good reason, and I feel like these, if you're playing it cautiously as a combat trick, then it's fine. And if your creature then sticks around, it's stronger and better for it. I like that. So 2?
Yeah, I think it's a 2. It's a combat trick plus, because if you'll get it to stick around if you use it right.
Yeah, also it's a 1 mana, so those are really hard to play around. 1 mana, +1/+0 and first strike, that's a combat trick I would play. The fact that it's going to stick on the creature after that, not first strike of course, is a nice bonus. So this is like a 2 to a 2/5, depending on what your creature count looks like.
Agreed. All right, here we have Mural Shield of Argive. It's a 4 mana 3/4 legendary human soldier. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Whenever Mural Shield of Argive attacks, create X 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control.
Holy,
So that's kind of like your Krenko effect.
holy potatoes.
Which is interesting because that kind of has always felt a little bit white, but it was in red before. Yeah,
It made sense for goblins.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it felt out of place in red, but it feels pretty much in flavor for white.
Yeah, the soldiers I'm getting more and more impressed by the soldiers as we go. I mean, this is a mythic, so it's not going to be very relevant, but it's a decent rate as it is. Her other ability where like your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities, artifacts, enchantments is really insane. That's a very, very good ability to just have on the board. Yeah, I think this card is fantastic.
Yeah, it basically says during your turn, your opponents can block, and that's it.
Yeah. This card is fantastic. I like this a ton. And even if you just like send her to her death, if she like trades down, like let's say they double block her with 2s or whatever, she still makes hopefully a couple more soldiers. It's pretty good. What do you think rating wise?
I think this card is does half this attack, so it's not a 5. I think it's probably a 4 with in the right soldier deck is going to be could get up to that 5 level.
Yeah, it's so for me, I think it's a 4/5. It's one of those things where if left untouched, if it gets to do what it wants to do, it can win the game. The 5 is where, you play it and they remove it, but you still win the game anyway. Those are the kinds of cards that hit 5.
Yeah.
There's usually only no more than 5 5s in an entire set, according to our ratings. So the 4s and the 4/5s tend to be the cards that are very, very strong if left alone. So I think this fits that sort of mark. And I will say that this is really cool with the aura that we saw that gave first strike. So like your opponent will think, oh, I need to, double block this and get it going. If you can protect it, which they can't cast instant sorceries or pump spells or whatever. So you just attack and then you give it first strike and you feel great. So it's really neat.
Yeah. One sort of, I guess, technicality on this card that I didn't realize is that there are a couple things you can do. You can activate lands, which there are a couple, and planeswalkers, which actually does matter for one card in this set, even on your turn.
Probably not super relevant and limited. Like,
No.
I doubt
No.
either of those things will be super important, but yes. Phalanx Vanguard. We have a 2/2 for 2. It has vigilance. It says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. That's a nice little bear plus. It's probably a 2 with some nice little couple extra points of damage here in the artifact version of the deck. Also, holy smokes, all the soldiers that we're making are colorless artifacts, right?
Yeah. So that 6 mana spell that makes 4 artifacts, now you've got a 6/2.
Dope. That's so cool. Like everything is sort of synergizing with itself. I think this is very cool, actually. So because the soldiers that we want to make and are being incentivized to make are so important and there's so many of them, I'm actually down to give this a bump. I think it's like a 2/5.
Yeah, I think it's a 2/5. I'm like envisioning every time an artifact comes that halberd gets longer. That's why it gets bigger.
A little stick 'em with the pointy end. Platoon Dispenser. We've got an artifact construct, 5 mana 4/6 that says at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. And for 4 mana, you can create a colorless artifact soldier. And this has Unearth, so you can then draw a card and make some extra soldiers, stuff like that, and then it goes away. But it's a huge creature. 4/6 for 5 mana is well above rate. It's going to draw you cards very easily, actually. If you control 2 or more other creatures, that's not too terrible, especially in white. We feel pretty good about it. And then it just makes its own things and helps fuel that ability anyway. This feels fantastic. This is a 4/5 for me.
Yeah, I think this is a 4/5. With how wide white's going, I could see the argument for this being a 5, but I think you're right. I think it's 4.
Yeah, I feel like it's not going to be super uncommon for you to draw the turn this comes out, but I don't know if that's necessarily game winning on its own. It's close. It's definitely better than just a vanilla thing, but not quite there for me.
It's not quite there. Yeah, it's not quite there.
So 4/5, we have an agreement. That's kind of rare this time. Normally we always agree, but we've been off about 1 to half point to a point on almost every card. Power Stone Engineer, 2 mana for a 2/1 human artificer that says whenever Power Stone Engineer dies, create a tapped Power Stone. Okay. It's a bear that makes you a Power Stone. It's fine. It's like a 2. It's not a soldier, so I'm a little sad about it.
Yeah, 2 is fine. There are a decent number of 1/1s we're seeing around, so 2/1 is worse than 2/2, but that's fine. It's a 2.
All right. Prison Sentence, 3 mana for an enchant aura. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. Enchant creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Wow. This is so cool. You get to scry as a bonus?
Yeah, I think it's funny that when you see these cards, they're what type of effect are they? They're an arrest effect, and now they've got the prison sentence after the arrest. It's even better.
That is true. That's cute. But this one seems really powerful. It does everything we want it to do. It's always done. Roughly the same price. And we get to scry 2. And it the last one, it was double white we were seeing. So it was a little harder to cast. This is fantastic.
Yeah. No, this card's very good.
This is white's 4.
Yeah. Arrest is always a 3/5 to a 4, and this is just better.
Great. All right, next we have a recommission, 2 mana for a sorcery that says return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters the battlefield this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Okay, so it's going to depend very much on what we've got going on as far as 3 mana value creatures. Obviously, the more we have of those and the more powerful that they are, like if you've got some rare 3-drop kind of cards, then we're looking at a higher rating. But for the most part, it's kind of a 1-for-1. What do you think, Yanks?
Yeah, I think this card's okay. It's probably, to me, going to hit fewer things than it has in the past because I think we're going to see decks where people are using Prototype to fill early casting cost, and that can't be hit by this.
I agree. For the most part, I'm not super interested in the recursion. That's just a 1-for-1.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, you've got enough of the right targets, like you said, then sure, but
it is kind of a good, like, if you're getting a 3-drop, it's slightly better for your mana, but I think this is just 2.
Yeah, I think it's 2.
All right. Recruitment Office, 1 mana for a 2/1 human soldier. You can pay 4. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them and put that into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. This seems fantastic. It's a soldier. It's a 1-drop, super aggressive, 2 power. I like it. This is great.
Yeah, and it's a recurring source of at least attempted card advantage.
Yeah. I mean, you do the aggressive stuff while you can, and once they stabilize with a 4/4, great. You sort of like get to dig out free creatures to help you get a little wider before you go at it again. So that's nice. I think it's like a 2/5.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which color pairing it is that cares about the cheap black-white. Unlimited cares about the 3 or less casting cost stuff. So in that deck, these cards have a little bit of a boost because they may trigger some of your other abilities.
Fair enough. So you think a 2/5 as well?
I think it's a 5, yep.
All right. Repair and recharge, 5 mana for a sorcery that says whenever target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker card, return an artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Create a tapped Power Stone. Okay, so it's just a larger version of that. And I mean, it getting back any enchantment, artifact, planeswalker, that includes your big creatures that you played for the cheaper cost, whatever it's called, the
For prototype.
Prototype type, yes. So I think if you have some cool targets like that, this could be pretty good.
It could be. Now, it doesn't hit regular creatures at all.
It doesn't.
Which is an interesting twist on like a resurrection type effect.
Well, it says recharge and repair, so it makes sense that it would have to be a robot, right?
Agreed.
Which I like. It's very flavorful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're repairing a planeswalker, but but it does make sense.
Whenever something says planeswalker for limited, I just kind of ignore it.
Oh yeah, it's flavor text for limited.
But I also like the art where it's like pulling it out of the scrap heap. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think this is it's kind of similar to the recommission, right? It's a 1-for-1. You can get some mana value out of it.
Yep. It's going to depend if you have good creatures and or good other things to hit. Like you want to have multiple targets that are all worth paying 5 mana for and you'll be happy to do so, then great. If not, I would not run this.
Agreed. It does play very nice with prototype, like you said.
Yeah. And I think prototype is great. You can you don't feel like you have to want to wait for them. You could just dump them out early and then you can play these and then you draw into more prototypes and you play those late. Feels great. So probably a 2 in most decks, maybe a 1/5.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 2, right? What you're ideally doing is you're playing like a 7-drop artifact for 3 for prototype, trading it off, and then you get it back with this, and make Power Stone in the process. That's your ideal scenario.
All right, Scrapwork Cohort, 4 mana for a 3/1 soldier. that says when it enters the battlefield, create another soldier artifact creature token. And you can unearth it as well, so you get a ton of good value here. You're going to be making 2 bodies, and you can do it again and attack in, either get 3 chip damage in with the unearth, or a nice trade for a free creature. Feels pretty powerful for a common for me. I like it. I like it at a 3.
Yeah, I think I'm slightly lower on this, but it's good. Like I'm at like a 2.5. And then if you're doing enough soldier stuff, I'll have it up.
Yeah, I feel like 4 bodies almost is like pretty solid, and you're gonna be doing some soldier stuff probably. So I think
yeah, I mean it's not quite 4 bodies, right? Because one of them goes away right away.
Or it does 3 damage, which is pretty good. I'm thinking that late in the game when we're unearthing that, they might have to block it. So there's
That's true.
Some chance that it also just also eats another dude, which sounds great.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm also kind of banking on making a reasonable trade with it in the first place. So if you get blown out, if they just brick you with a 4/4 and you do nothing but make 2 2/2s or 2 1/1s, then yeah, it's going to be pretty bad. But not if you have my preview card, which is what this card is, the Siege Veteran, a 3 mana 2/2 human soldier that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It doesn't say soldier, which is great. And whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, create another token soldier and go all the wides, all the bigs, do the thing. I love it. This is my soldier preview card, and I was super stoked, and I think it's fantastic. You guys remember Luminarch Aspirant? That card was good. This feels also good.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We've seen this ability before, and it was
it didn't make more creatures.
And this is better. Cost 1 more, but it's better, and it's a relevant creature type.
Yep. It also kind of is the same rate as the Luminarch Aspirant because it was a 1/1 that kind of was a 2/2 on 2. This is like a 3/3 on 3, right? So even though you're playing it a turn later, it's kind of doing the same thing, which is neat. And Luminarch Aspirant didn't make other bodies, which is insane.
Oh yeah, this is definitely more powerful.
So yeah, I'm all about this card. I think this is a 4/5. It's gonna win you the game if left to do its thing.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Soul Partition. We have a 2 mana instant, exile target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast by an opponent this way costs 2 more to cast. Okay, so it's sort of like, wow, that's an interesting card. It sort of does what Paulo did, right?
So,
but
my first
after it's in play.
Yeah. My first instinct on reading this card was this card stinks. Like, why am I paying 2 mana just for the effect of, Paulo's card when I'm not getting the body with it? But when I thought about it a little more, it's basically just a bounce spell.
It's a bounce spell that's better. It's just a better time walk tempo card. Yeah, that's how I read it. And I was just like, oh, this is dope. You get to do what Paulo does, but something that's already in play. Like, if you play him too late, you kind of get wrecked, right? This just lets you do that anyway. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And at instant speed. At instant speed.
Yeah, if this card was... I think if this card was, like, blue and a common and was 1 and a blue and said bounce and then cost by 2, then cost 2 more, it's like, yeah, of course that would be really good. I think it's just the fact that it was... it says exile, and it's like, well, not really. It made it look worse than it is.
It felt more flickery to me. But yeah, I think this card is cool. I'm down to play it. I like the tempo. That said, it's not game-winning bomb stuff happening. It's going to tempo your opponent out, and it feels pretty good. So I think it's like a 3/5.
I don't have it nearly that high. Because I wouldn't give an unsummoned that. Now, granted, this is better. But I think I've got it like a 2/5.
Okay. Yeah, what did I say?
3/5.
I think it's more of a 3. 3/5 is high. I'm just really excited about it, I guess. But I am higher than
it's
a 2/5.
It's a cool card.
I am higher than a 2/5. So we'll be a half a point off on that one.
Yeah.
Static Net, we have a 4 mana enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, target non-land permanent opponent controls. Exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and create a power stone. That does a lot of shit.
Yeah,
Interesting that we're seeing white again have more than one aura removal spell, which is not normal, but we saw a lot with DMU. There was 3, and now there is 3 again, because we have the rare, just like we did in DMU. Here's the common and the arrest. So pretty crazy that this is now becoming normal for white, and I think white is getting a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, your Banishing Light O-Ring effect usually costs 3. This costs 1 more, but gets you some bonuses.
Yeah, and I expect them to sometimes be a little worse when they're giving me 3 of them in a format, not just the 1, right? If they're giving me just the 1, I need it to be really good. But, removal's hard to find in white sometimes, but it's getting easier. So this is a 3/5 for me.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Steel Seraph. We have a 6 mana with Prototype 3. It's a 3/3 with flying. Or you can pay it for 6 and get a 5/4 with flying, and either way, they both get at the beginning of combat on your turn. Target creature you control gains your choice of flying, vigilance, lifelink until end of turn. That seems fantastic. This card is great. It's like a 4 or 5. Like, it can win some games, man.
Yeah, I mean, what's the downside here? You have a 3 mana, 3/3 flying vigilant or flying lifelink attacker.
Yeah.
Like that's like the worst this card could be. I mean, other than it can't even stick in your hand for 6 mana because you can play it for 3.
And it leaps something else, it flies something else, it lifelinks, it vigilances, it does everything. Holy smokes. It's like a 4 or 5 for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this card's fantastic.
Survivor of Corliss. A 1 mana 1/1 with first strike. You can pay 2. You can exile it from your graveyard and scry 2. It's a human soldier, so it's a relevant creature type. It's a 1/1 for 1 first striker that's kind of comes in handy, so it's very aggressive in the soldier decks. It can take down 2/2s for 2, so it plays kind of like a 2-drop, but you get to cast it on 1, so I'm happy with that. I think this is a fine card with a relevant creature type. It's a 2/5.
Yeah, we're seeing lots of X1s in this format, so it's going to be pretty good.
Awesome. We have a Thopter Architect, 4 mana for a 2/3 human artificer that says whenever an artificer enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains flying until end of turn. That's cool. We've seen this before. I can't remember the set, but there was something very similar. Oh, and it was a menace. It was a blue creature.
Yeah,
and I remember just praying. I just remember praying that they didn't find whatever it was that ETB'd and did the thing. It was like a wizard or something. And that card was kind of a house.
Yeah, I can't think of it. I know the card you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it.
Do you remember what it ETB'd for?
No.
I think it was wizards, or I'm pretty sure it was blue. Anyway, I think this card's pretty good. We've seen a fair amount of artificers. So I think this is cool.
Yeah. Remember, it's an artifact, not artificer. So even
that's
better.
Actually better.
Yeah, in this set.
I thought that said artificer because it was an artificer, but no, this is just even better. Great.
Yeah. You mean you need 4 mana 2/3, so you need to have artifacts, but that's not going to be hard in this set, right? Every single deck is going to have plenty of those.
Every single deck will have enough to make this playable at a 2, but in the right decks, this will be a 3.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
So let's just give it a 2/5. In the average deck, right? Because you have some sort of range between what is the average number of artifacts. So we'll just put it in the middle. Okay. Tocasia's Onlet?
Yep. I believe it's Tocasia, yeah.
Sure. Tocasia's Onlet is a 5 mana construct creature. It's a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and you can unearth it. So you get a little extra life. You get to dome somebody for 4 again, which feels pretty good. Or make them chump. Probably just eats like a saproling type creature or whatever. And gains you 4 life for the card. It's a little pricey for me, but what do you think, Yanks?
Yeah, I don't love it. I think we've seen enough other large things in this set already, just in white, that I'm not going to be desperate to play this, but I think it's like a 2? Maybe a 2/5 if you've got some unearthed shenanigans going on. But
like the flicker aura
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, like the Flicker Aura or a lot of artifact ETB triggers. Um, I'm not too sure the Omulet, the like kind of reverse jointed elephant, would appreciate being called an omelet, though.
Yes, everybody in chat is calling it an omelet, but that's okay. Yeah, so I'm in the two realm. Even the unearth is a little pricey for you to be doing any sort of unearth shenanigans
Yep.
with, so that makes me a little off of that. But yeah, I think it's a fine card. Takacia's Welcome. We have a 3-mana enchantment. Oh my god, is this going to be a wedding announcement? Look, they're looking at something.
No, no.
Oh my god.
It's very, very much not a wedding announcement, but I like it.
Drat. Whenever one or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card, and this ability triggers only once per turn. Huh. So it's sort of like welcoming vampire, but not on a body.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, 2 things. It sucks that you can't beat them down with the thing that's giving you card advantage, but also, this is harder to remove. So there's that. So you're more likely to draw more cards, but you're less likely to hit them with a 2/3 flyer for 3. That was fantastic on its own. So you kind of need more turns for this to become relevant, but it will likely be relevant for much, much longer, which I like. So, I mean, this is still probably playable, but I would much rather have a welcoming vampire.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fits nicely into the theme of that white black deck here. It does trigger off tokens, which is nice. So yeah, I agree. Having the body would be nicer, but this card's good.
Yeah, I think it's like a 3.
Yep, and story time.
Okay, quick. You have
Quick. This is a short
a minute and a half of story time.
No, this is a short one. This is just the scene Takasia ran the desert camp that was digging up these Thran artifacts that Urza and Mishra got sent to. And if you just look at the flavor text here, basically, their father, she owed him something. It's never particularly explained what in the books. And basically, their father got remarried. The stepmother didn't really want the kids around. They sent them there. And this is when they first arrived, basically, at the camp. This is the beginning of sort of the story.
Aw, cute. I like it. That was a good little bonus info there. Let's go ahead and move to the Union of the Third Path. Union of the Third Path. 3 mana for an instant. Draw a card. Then you gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. It's an interesting cycle card for 3 mana. Kind of not into it. But if there's life gain synergies, which I haven't seen so far, I'm not, or any sort of like magecraft, but again, not seeing something like that. So those are the kinds of things I would look for when I'm looking at this sort of thing. But for the most part, not interested. What do you think, Yanks?
Yeah, I'm not interested in this, other than it's got a nice callback, especially its flavor text, to the card Ivory Tower, which was gaining life equal to cards in your hand above, I think it's above 4. And the Ivory Towers were located in Teresia City, which is where the Third Path was being studied.
Okay. So we're going to rate that a 1, guys.
Yep.
Urza's Silex. We have a 3 mana legendary artifact. For 4 mana, 2 white, you can tap it. Each player chooses 6 lands they control. Destroy all other permanents. Okay. Activate as a sorcery. You exile the Silex, of course. And then it says whenever Silex is put into your exile from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card, reveal it, put that into your hand, and shuffle. This is cute because I like that my white EDH decks will be able to punish all those dirty green decks and their stupid ramping, but this is not for me for limited, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, this is an EDH and a story card, right? This is the Silex that Loran was holding in her hand when she was running away. This is the climax of the story where he blows up everything, all the armies, and the exiling part where he then searches a Planeswalker is nice because the Silex Blast turned Urza into a Planeswalker.
Story time! Also, dirty green EDH players, get punished.
You could remove green from that, and I agree.
It's a 1.
Yeah, well...
Sorry, story actually, climax, you're a 1.
I don't know if it's that bad because it is still a Wrath. Right? It's a Wrath that's on board that you can choose
destroy
when to blow.
All other permanents. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking it was only hitting the lands.
Yeah.
because of the way it was worded. It was like pick 6 lands, destroy the rest, basically. And I was like, oh, you just destroy 4 lands. Okay, moving on. Okay, fine. It's better than that, I guess.
I mean, it's expensive, but you can put it on the board as a failsafe if they try to prevent them from going big. Then they see it. It's got some interesting gameplay there, but it is a board wrath, which are always
Yeah, it is
good,
better
if
than
not
I
great.
thought. Okay, fine. It's actually quite good. I like rats. There's a lot of main deck artifact removal in this format we're gonna see. So I wouldn't put this out all willy-nilly on turn 3 if you don't have
Agreed.
to. I would rather just cast it for 7.
For 7. Yep.
Exactly. When it's safe, I wouldn't just throw it out there unless your opponent's just like in, I don't know, black, blue. Probably can't remove it very, very easily. White and green usually can.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. It's like what? Like wraths are usually like a 4.
Yeah, this is probably a 3/5 because it's expensive.
Correct. Okay, I like 3/5. We'll go there. All right, Veterans Power Blade, 3 mana for a +2/+0 equipment, and you can equip it for 2 or 1 white for a soldier. So this could go technically in the colorless artifacts, but it has the nice soldier artifact thing. The Wizards put all of their white identity artifacts in with the white cards for the set, which is an interesting choice. But I think it's relevant to evaluate here because it is much better in white. But it does say equip soldier specifically, so it is still a little tough. I'm kind of on the fence about this card. It doesn't quite do enough, but the rate for equip is pretty decent, both soldier or non-soldier. So I think it's like a 2. It's just like borderline playable card.
Yeah, I think it's a 2. You're probably not playing this outside of white, but I guess you could.
Yeah, I think you could. It's like just a fine card filler.
Yeah.
All right, Warlords Elite, 3 mana for a human soldier, 4/4. What in the Christmas? This better have some sort of drawback on it. As an additional cost to cast this, tap 2 untapped artifact creatures and or lands you control. Huh. So you don't have to have other creatures. You can just, it's a 5 mana 4/4. Like you can tap lands, right? So that at its base, it's exactly what we normally see. 5 mana 4/4s with a relevant creature type. Now sometimes they also have like vigilance or something, and that's kind of cool. But this also allows you to just tap creatures and sort of like haste it in. So that's probably why we don't have vigilance. This is okay.
Yeah, it's also cute that this actually lets you tap Power Stones to cast the non-artifact.
Ooh, yeah, you're right.
Just kind of an interesting, cute design mechanic there. And it's a soldier, so it's pretty good.
I think so. I'm willing to give this like a 2/5. I'm probably going to play it in most white decks as like a top end.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to just parse the way this is written. If you can, yeah, you should be able to tap any combination of 2 of those things. It doesn't have to be 2 artifacts, 2 creatures.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you can do any number.
Yeah. And it's also, it's a 5 mana card, quote unquote, that triggers your Takassia's Welcome. And things like that. So yeah, I like it, Rero, where you had it.
2/5. All right. Yotian Frontliner? Yotian Frontliner. Yoshin Frontliner, sure. 1 mana for a artifact creature soldier. It's a 1/1, and it says whenever it attacks, another target creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn, and you can unearth it. It's very low impact, but it's an artifact. It's going to trigger some stuff. It's a soldier. It's going to unearth some ETBs, some artificer triggering flying things. That's pretty cool. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think this on its face is probably like a 1/5, but it probably has enough synergies floating around that in most of the decks, most white decks at least, it's going to be a 2 to a 2/5.
Yeah, I like it at a 2. I think there are, like you said, enough things that are just randomly going to be good with this. Like the little artificer that pops things up. Great, I'm happy.
It also looks like a stormtrooper.
It does kind of, yeah. Okay, we have, man, there's a lot of Ys. Yoshin Medic, 3 mana for a human cleric soldier with lifelink. It's a 1/4. Pretty straightforward. I like that there are a lot of things that pump this. It kind of helps stabilize. It's a relevant creature type. Normally the 1/4s in the world typically wouldn't help fuel this, and lifelink is always a really nice thing to have access to. Bricks some of the more aggressive decks, but also still really relevant in your aggressive decks. So I think that's fine. It's like a 2/5.
Yeah, I think I've got it probably as a 2, but enough soldier stuff, and it's a 2/5 then.
All right, that is the end of our white. Yanks, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime, happy to help.
And if you guys missed the introduction, make sure you guys go check it out. And don't forget to come back tomorrow where we'll be posting blue and all of our ratings. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. I'd like to end this video with a special thank you to those of you guys who have signed up for my Patreon. Without my wonderful patrons, none of this content would be possible. If you'd like to support this content and get your name up on the Wall of Fame, you can sign up for our Patreon by using the link down below in the description. Another way you can support the channel is by using code MNG5 with Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find cool stuff in stock. They have everything you need for Magic, board games, and any of your other nerdy hobbies.